Liz Ireland, based at Bigjigs Toys down in the southeast in sunny Folkestone. We are a wooden toy wholesaler, importer, distributor to essentially the retail independent trade within the UK. And back in 2009, we decided that having worked hard to establish ourselves in the UK market, that because we controlled our own brand, there was a market beyond the UK. But it was a question of how we dealt with it, where we went, whether the product was acceptable, and whether we were able to, in fact, achieve any penetration into market in order to make some sales. So having started life back in '85 with my husband in a garden shed making a few products, we had then got ourselves to warehousing, to having a product range, to supplying into retail accounts up and down the country. And we felt that the presentation of our product was acceptable to be sold offshore. We felt our model in the UK was one that worked, and that was one that we would be able to scale into extra markets, whether those markets were English speaking only, or whether we'd got to do some work in order to make the presentation of the product better for the market that we were going to. So we thought, we looked at our product, we looked at the design of it, we considered whether it was appropriate for some markets offshore, whether it was compliant in the new area, because toys, as you know now, are treated like food. They have to be tested, they have to be batch coded, they have to be compliant to the market with warnings and so on with regard to age appropriateness. And it was whether we felt that the product was ready to go in other markets outside the UK. The presentation gave us a few problems. First of all, we were going to come up considerably against a number of different languages, because being a UK company, all of our product is presented in English. So could that packaging be understood in a new market? Did it convey the right message? And was it going to be compliant? Not only were we thinking about product and presentation, but we were also considering the model that we used for UK sales. And that's one of working at trade shows, having a series of agents that deal with geographical areas, and was that the way that we were going to work in an area offshore, or did we have to find a foreign office? Did we have to put somebody in an office within the territory in order to try and make the model work? So all of these things made us think, and we were categorising how we were going to try and deal with markets. And that, strangely enough, we ended up with 3 geographical areas. And all of those geographical areas became a group because they shared the same sorts of problems. So we came up with what we termed the Bigjigs split. We came up with Europe because we felt that our existing model that operated from Folkestone in the UK could be transferred into working within the EU, or within Europe, not just the EU. We came up with North America, and we knew for sure, whilst they spoke the same language and the product was okay, we were not able to operate our same model because we couldn't ship economically from the UK to North America. And we came up with the rest of the world, which gave us the biggest challenges, because we then ran into all sorts of difficulties that related to the product, the presentation, the currency, the language, everything. So Europe whilst we thought it was going to be easy, there's 23 officially recognised languages spoken in Europe. The currency isn't just the euro. Not everybody belongs to the Eurozone. There's a huge economic and cultural difference between North and South and East and West. Though movement of goods, there are pallet companies and couriers who assist with the movement of goods all the way across Europe. That was going to help us, but between us and Europe, we had got difficulties with the costs that we were going to incur in getting the product across the English Channel. And if we've got additional costs that we've got to accept, were we going to be acceptable and at a right price point within the market? The North American model that we considered, clearly language was okay, with the exception of Quebec in Canada, because that's French speaking, and the Hispanic areas in the southwest. We've got massive currency benefits because the majority of our product is bought in dollars, and it would mean that we would be buying and selling in the same currency. The culture was very similar to the UK one in the main. The economic situation was similar again to the UK. Movement of goods gave us difficulty because the US is vast, and we had to consider different ways of moving those goods around. We also had to consider the costs and working in third-party warehousing, because certainly as a start-up in the US, we would have needed to have used the facilities of a third-party warehousing situation. And were we going to be able to operate in the market with a similar model that we've got here, which is a series of agents? Or were we going to perhaps work on websites or a call centre? It gave us a few other things to think about. The rest of the world, we've got all sorts of difficulties. We've got language problems, we've got currency issues, we've got cultural difficulties, we've got differing economic situations from country to country, ranging from big GDP in some places to trade embargoes in others. We had got problems with moving goods. Where exactly was it that we were going to ship those goods from? And what were the costs of those goods going to be? And that depended on so many other factors that each territory within the rest of the world group had to be dealt with as a single territory. So we needed to find a series of solutions. We had internal solutions that we felt that we were capable and able to deal with ourselves, and we had a series of external issues that we needed to find solutions to, but we needed help from external agencies. So internally, we could adjust the product, we could alter the presentation of the product, we could deal with the logistical issues of moving the product particularly into Europe, and operationally, we could also deal with the orders in the UK warehouse and ship into Europe. But externally, we needed additional help with finance and with banking. We clearly had to go out to companies to get languages other than English presented on the box. We needed market information that helped us specifically about economic information about geographical areas, and we also needed information about cultural differences. And part of those cultural differences, clearly we could sort ourselves out on, because we could do a market visit, but there was other information that we needed over and above the information that we could find out ourselves to make sure that the product was addressing and appropriate for the culture where we were going. So UKTI were integral into what we were doing. They helped us with courses regarding winning and delivering export business. I went on a course with them, and for 3 days there were a group of people in similar positions to me who discussed product and how we put together some sort of plan in order to go to market our product outside the UK. Passport to Europe was like a year-long guide by UKTI, and that structure helped us with obtaining sales in territories outside the UK. They assisted with grants and funding for printing within the UK, with market visits, and also with support for trade fairs within Europe. There was professional support. A couple of people came in, usually between a month and 6 weekly periods, where we sat and talked about what we'd done, about what we needed to do, and about whether we needed to adjust what we were going to do. And they offered us business opportunities with particular information regarding specific markets. So internally, we dealt with catalogues. We translated or had translated considerable amounts of information so that we could present product to specific areas of Europe. We translated all of our websites. We registered particular domain names, Bigjigs Toys, in a number of countries across the EU. We set a euro price list because what we found we needed to do was to try and work with people who did have the euro as a currency, so that they were able to buy goods and pay for them in their own native country, in their own native currency. We adjusted our back office situations so that we had specific people within the office who were responsible for orders that were coming in from the EU. We dealt with additional warnings on product, because if you sell into European countries, then the warnings must be appropriate for those markets. And ongoing, we then found ourselves, having achieved those sales, we then found ourselves with HMRC requesting not just EC sales lists from us, but also Intrastat declarations with mass and product information. We had to decide whether everything with regard to Europe was dealt with by a European office or by headquarters down in Folkestone. And in fact, we've got a mix of two. We have got an office in the EU. We've also got an office in Poland, because Poland is a very different market within the EU. We've got some agents, we've got some distributors, we've got a mix of both, again, because within Europe we found that specific markets had specific requirements. We had an additional problem of, okay, so if we're going to do a show within the EU, how actually are we going to speak to our audience? Because whilst the majority of our staff are all English and only speak English, we have got odd people who speak French, odd people who speak German, but when you exhibit at Nuremberg, you need to have access to something like 10 or 12 language speakers to converse with the audience. Whilst we all take the internet and what it does for us at the moment as a given, 6 years ago, the internet was in its infancy. Though I can assure anybody who's now working with Europe that Mr. Google is a great person, because a search in Europe for a brand or a brand's name will find what you need, and clearly that's helped. Amazon has, I would argue, has always also helped, because whilst Amazon was in the UK, it now distributes all over Europe, and therefore the brand being sold through Amazon as well as into the trade assists our marketing. So we've decided to give a little bit of dedicated time to Europe, in that we've now appointed a European sales manager who is based in Holland, and he oversees everything within the Europe area. He focuses on growth, and he is dedicated and offers support to all of those EU accounts, not just the retail, but in the markets where we felt that we couldn't supply directly, we've set up distributors, and he obviously assists them and supports them. There is a point of contact within the UK office for the whole of Europe, should we need to have one, but in fact, most of the queries go via the EU office in Holland, so that particular feature isn't really used a great deal. And we also picked out our best pickers and packers in the warehouse to deal with those European orders, because that means that there's those people, because they're the best, make less errors, and that actually is the most economical way of moving the stuff around, because there's either less damages or less shortages if we get either in anybody's order. So as we've evolved in Europe, because we designed some of our own product as well, we have had to make slight adjustments to the product that we do design, and whilst the product might be the same, what we now choose not to do is to add any English text to that product. The feedback was, whilst it was okay, the general feeling was that in areas where English isn't the first language, there is a preference for product that doesn't have English written on it. We clearly have an ongoing and day-to-day the management of the currency, because we set the EU price list. It is in euros, with the exception of Poland that deals in zloty. And clearly we now, as a business, have to manage considerably more bank accounts than we did before. We need to hedge with regard to our currency, so we've always hedged with regard to US dollars, because that's the currency that we buy most of our stock in, but we now hedge with regard to selling euros, because we're always euro heavy. We issue a bespoke, or we have done up until 2016, we've issued a bespoke catalogue for the EU that has been translated, but times have moved on, and having questioned many of the retailers across the EU, they're actually now happy to have the UK version, which isn't translated, and therefore we're now all working on a Europe-wide catalogue. And we have to be open-minded and be prepared to change tack when we need to. So whilst in Scandinavia, up until December last year, we had a distributor, that model for Scandinavia no longer works, and we've now gone back to having an agent, because we feel that we're going to get more product to more people, and they're going to have access to more product. So we've still got areas within Europe where the market is resistant to manufacturers from outside the country. The one that I always cite is Germany. German retailers like to buy German-based or product from German-based companies. And whilst we have got some customers, we haven't got as many customers in Germany as we would have hoped to have. Because Amazon now sells product throughout Europe, HMRC are keen that VAT is paid appropriately at appropriate rates in particular EU countries. And so we are now in the process of a fairly substantial project to register for VAT in 4 countries, where through third-party sales we've actually breached the VAT threshold. That with our financial controller is a fairly substantial project that she's now dealing with. And clearly, we have for the last 20 years bought in dollars and sold in pounds. Exporting now pushes you into different currencies, and we're pushed into issuing a euro price list, and also issuing a zloty price list, and therefore we have to manage those currencies as well. Elsewhere, we have still got export, but as I said, Europe was the first area that we chose to tackle. But simultaneously, though with a different model, we also decided to set up Bigjigs Toys in the North American market, and that now, whilst is a very, very different model to the one we use here, that now is managed by a US sales manager. As far as Europe is concerned and the rest of the world, there are regular orders, daily orders, that leave the warehouse in Folkestone, and some of those orders go to distributors, some of the orders go direct into retail, but all of that now is managed by an international sales manager whose territory is not Europe, not North America, but deals with the rest of the world. And in conclusion, exporting was a big move forward for us, for the brand. It increased our ability to buy product in the Far East, because MOQs there are never small. So a big move forward. However, if you're planning to start exporting, don't underestimate the challenge, because it's vast and it's ongoing. And whilst we've actually been exporting now since the end of 2009, we're still tweaking, we're still altering, we're still making sure that what we're doing is appropriate to the market that we're going into. But I think the key thing with regard to starting to export is that you have to make sure that the basics that you work on in your main market are absolutely rock solid, because if you start exporting, if you've got product offshore and that product is delivered which is either inappropriate or unsafe or unsuitable, it will cost a fortune to redress that situation, not just on a logistical basis, but also on a brand basis. And whilst UKTI helped us back in 2009 and 2010 into the beginning of 2011, they then went away, and we got on with doing our best to build what we could, particularly in Europe and North America, and latterly in the rest of the world. They are now back with us, helping us again to grow the rest of the world sales and dealing with the export as a market by market project.